Welcome to back to the M365, the podcast where we explore the people, technologies, and ideas shaping the future of Microsoft 365, AI, and modern workplaces. Today, I'm joined by Nathan Rose, a Microsoft Business Application MVP from Auckland. Nathan is a Power Platform solution architect with experience in stretching from the CRM to 2011 days all the way to today's AI-powered low-code ecosystem. He worked with organizations across Australia and New Zealand, helping both public and private sector customers build enterprise-grade solutions using Microsoft Business applications. Nathan is also particularly passionate about Copilot Studio, Dataverse, and MCP, and helping organizations create scalable AI agents that actually solve business problems. You may know Nathan from his content platform, No Code, No Mercy, his YouTube channel, or from speaking at events like the New Zealand Business Application Summit and Definitely. And yeah, Nathan, welcome to the 365 podcast.
Thanks so much, Mirko. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Cool. So, tell us a little bit about your journey into the Microsoft technology.
Sure. So I always used to say that I have a non-traditional background for technical people, but that's not actually true anymore because in the low code power platform world, pretty much all of us come from doing something else. Mark Smith was a groundskeeper. Um, Craig White was a bookkeeper, Natalie Leanders was a hairdresser. We all did different things and then eventually got hands-on with Power Platform, fell in love with it, and here we all are. I worked in corporate sales for about a decade, was really bad at it. Don't ask me how to close a deal, I don't know. Um, and segued into working as a business analyst and, being a BA is not a bad role. It just, for me, I got to and I was always working with, Dynamics CRM and eventually Power Platform, but I found that I was much more interested in actually solving the problem than doing what a BA is supposed to do, which is define the problem. Yeah, and so, yeah, I eventually found my way into the consulting world, and yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years working as a consultant and architect with, Dynamics and Power Platform.
This is also, yeah, I think a lot of people have not the classic, I don't know, study IT or something background. And yeah, I think that it's yeah, with the citizen development, Microsoft do a lot of that. All the, I say, normal people can join this area. But your long time was in the CRM area. What changes see you there?
Yeah, so I started with, version 2011 of CRM and just always worked with, what today is called Dynamics 365 CE or customer engagement. In 2019, I was part of a private preview for what we now know today as Copilot Studio, what was Power Virtual Agent, when it was first introduced. And I absolutely fell in love with the Power Platform because for the first time, I got hands-on with Power Automate and all these different tools. Because on its own, Power Virtual Agent, when it first came out, was somewhat limited. It was really cool that we could build these deterministic chat experiences, but what was really amazing about it was we could hook it up to Dataverse by way of Power Automate, which is the first thing I did. And back then, we didn't have connectors. I literally had people in product group in Redmond writing JSONs for me because I prior to this, I thought JSON was a movie character. I didn't realize that it was something that we actually did professionally. But that was how we connected to Dataverse using HTTP connectors and so I just absolutely fell in love with it and kind of started my tradition of, the demos I build are things that you should not try at home, like, don't do this in production, kids, but I literally hooked Dataverse up to the bot and was opening and closing cases in customer service and inserting rows and doing all kinds of things, and I showed it to a colleague whose first response was, why are you letting unauthenticated users into Dataverse? And I was like, well, the joy of preview features is we get to work out what's possible, and then we walk it back to what's responsible for GA. But that was how I got into Power Platform, through what we now know today as Copilot Studio. So it is something very special to my heart.
Mm. And what could you give advice for someone who entering the Power Platform so they don't feel like meeting Jason?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I would say, get hands-on as fast as you can. Don't be afraid, to just try stuff. The community is incredibly welcoming. That's probably one of the best things about Power Platform World is just everybody is so incredibly inclusive and welcoming. We don't, we're not fussed about what you studied or what your background is. We just want to hear your ideas and we want to help you solve problems, right? And that's kind of what we all do for each other. And that's what makes it such an amazing thing to be a part of. So I would say there's never been a better time to get into Power Platform if you're thinking of doing it. The best way is just to get hands on. And you're probably going to find, you'll just start doing solving problems in your workplace today. That's how most of us got onto it. We discovered Power Apps, Power Automate, Dataverse, things like that, and we started making business problems go away. After I had my private preview experience with Power Virtual Agent and started to get good with Power Automate, um, I had um, I had a process as part of my job that took 3 days a week of my time. So there was a design flaw in our CRM. We had a custom table associated to cases that had payment details for warranty upgrades. So when people wanted to they had a warranty issue and it was like, hey, we could fix it, or for another $100 you could upgrade, right? So who's not gonna do that? Um, the problem was, they would close the cases, which meant, all the child tables, you couldn't do anything on them. So, by the time, something got shipped from the factory, the case was closed, and so the credit cards never got billed. So we get these huge spreadsheets from finance saying, "We've got $30,000 worth of product that we've shipped, and, we haven't collected any cash for it." And so I would literally have to go in, open the case, do the thing to build a credit card and close the case again. And that took 3 days a week of my time. And I eventually got to the point where I had it built in Power Automate. And this was a iterative thing. But by the end, literally the email would come in from the failed integration, snip out the case ID from the subject line, go look it up, open the case, do the thing, close the case. And 3 days a week of my time went to zero. And so those are the kinds of things, if you've got access to Power Platform, to start looking for those things. And where it gets even more exciting now is we're moving into this agentic world. So the example I just gave was in this, deterministic world that most of us lived in prior to LLMs. Today, it is, there's so many more problems that you can solve because you are not limited by, we have this deterministic thing that always must work this way. We can start to, when we need to look at an email and decide who it goes to and all that type of stuff, we can start to bring in that agentic layer. And in many ways, building agents is in some ways a lot easier than building the deterministic workflows that we did in the past. I mean, it's funny. I was thinking about this morning. There are so many times when I'm doing something with generative AI, whether it's building a prompt, whether it's creating a skill, whether it's building an agent, where it's literally as easy as just writing out what I want it to do. In the low code world, it was never that easy. It was, okay, I might describe what I want it to do, but that's the document. And then I have to go in and start configuring stuff. Now, like I literally just say, I want you to go do these things, and it goes and does those things. So the barrier to entry is getting lower and lower all the time.
And what did you think is okay? We have low code, no code, and I
Yep.
think big buzzword is vibe code. But
Yep.
how did you think is there any new challenges that coming up with this kind AI functions and
Oh yeah. So Tons. So I released a video on Friday showing some of the
Of course.
new Dataverse plugins from the product team and doing some amazing things with GitHub Copilot, stuff that, used to take us hours and hours, creating tables and columns and adding stuff to forms and moving users between business units. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of what these things can do. And in the comments, there's all the usual, well, you've got to look out for hallucinations and, this doesn't replace good design and all that. Like, yeah, of course, obviously. But yeah, so you do need, those are all things that need to be taken into consideration. I don't, even those of us who, I would say, yeah, I'm a bit of a cheerleader and an apologist for AI and natural language. But at the same time, we've got to do these things responsibly. And so, yeah, there are a lot of challenges that we have to look at in terms of let's make sure that, we are getting the intended effect, that we're not creating, just more issues for ourselves.
I think a lot of companies think also about the topic governance, compliance, risk.
Yep.
How do you see these topics, especially with this
Yep.
AI, our platform
Yeah.
logo stuff?
Yep. I think they're becoming increasingly more important. So, in the low code era of Power Platform, we didn't hear a lot about governance until kind of the late 2010s, 2020s. That's when governance started to kind of take off as a conversation. The Power Platform, sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the governance tool that you can install. I've never actually successfully installed it. It's a bit of a drama. We probably should edit that bit out, but the yeah, that was a bit of an afterthought. Because it was like, hey, let's turn the citizen devs loose, and then it was like, oh no, we've got all these apps and all these automations and so many, same but
Shit,
different, we've got 17 different expense
research.
approval apps because Nathan has his app and it's different from Mary's, which is different from Mirko's, which is and it was this idea of, oh wow, we need to govern this. Microsoft have been very early in the piece, with AI. There's Agent 365, which, came out earlier this year. It's been really encouraging to see them so early to the table saying, "Hey, here's an inventory of your agents. Here's how you manage and control this. Here's how you can block agents and push them to specific users and have some control over what's going on with AI in your organization." I had a look at it the other day in post build. There's a new shadow AI feature in there, and so it's really starting to help with the governance of this. And I think our role as consultants is going to increasingly move from being hands-on tools, which is what we've done to date, right? Our job has been to go away and build this stuff, and as we are increasingly seeing, AI can do a lot of this stuff for us. Now, it's not going to 100% replace, um, what we do as consultants today, but I think we are going to be it is gonna push us in an exciting direction, I think, which is more towards looking at things like governance, looking at things like how does this align with strategy? Um, how does this align with business value and business goals, which to me, those are the exciting conversations to have as opposed to, did I use the right solution and that type of thing. So, yeah, so that's, and when I say let me just caveat, when I say solution, I mean the solution in Dataverse to move stuff around. Yeah, so that's I do see governance as increasingly becoming a big part of what we will be doing as consultants.
And yeah, you have become particular known for your work with Copilot Studio. What attracted you to it?
Yeah, so as I said, I have a kind of deep history with Copilot Studio because I was involved with the private preview of its predecessor, and that's what kind of started everything for me with Power Platform. I did I was a bit resistant at first because, I kind of came up in the low code world. The low code world kinda gave me everything. What it's kind of what allowed me to break out from a more unfulfilling role as a business analyst into consulting. Um, it's kind of where I made my name and how I became an MVP working with a lot of this low code technology. And the writing was on the wall pretty early with AI that it's not clear that low code is gonna be the way forward. And, like anyone, I felt somewhat threatened, because I was like, "Oh, no, like, this stuff that I love and I'm kind of known for is under threat." Um, and then last year at, Power Platform Bootcamp, Clive Aldrich, who's one of our other MVPs here in New Zealand, was giving a demo showing just some amazing stuff in Dataverse with using some AI tools that he had built, and the penny dropped, and I was like, "Okay, low code has an expiry date," and so I, very quickly shifted my focus in terms of the demos I build and the content that I produce to be heavily Copilot Studio and AI focused just because that is the direction of travel. And it was a good choice because at Power Platform Conference last year, Charles Lamana dropped the mic and said that low code is dead as we know it. So yeah, that's kind of how and why I shifted into being more focused on Copilot Studio.
Yeah, we have got in Power Apps, we have these, I think, how what we have the Canvas app and the model-driven app, and now it's some new AI,
Code apps
code apps. Yeah,
and
right.
yeah, the Thrive Power
But
Apps.
what's the difference between code apps and Copilot Studio?
Yep. So code apps are simply applications that you can build with React code. So they my understanding is that it's probably going to be the replacement for Canvas apps at some point. That's just my personal opinion. That's nothing official. But the idea of Canvas apps was for the first time we could create a custom UI for the user and do that in a low code way. With code apps, and the challenge that we had with Canvas apps was you used Power Effects, which, is kind of what I got known for, um, as that abstraction layer to create the application. It basically lets you use those Excel type formulas. So if you could use Excel, you could create an app to go and customize the UI and do things with data. Now, because you had that layer between the JavaScript that was being compiled underneath and the Power Effects, you did have some performance issues and other types of things that um, would present themselves. There were delegation type of issues when you're dealing with large amounts of data, and some of it was in the app, and some of it you'd have to go off to Dataverse to get that type of thing. Um, with code apps, we we can now control the experience far more because it is a full-fledged pro code app as opposed to this low code app using an abstraction layer. So it is pro code that's being written, and so as a dev, you can go and write the React app today and deploy it to Power Apps. There is also the Vibe.Power Apps experience where those of us who don't write code can just put in natural language and it will go and create all of the Dataverse tables and that React app for you. Now, at the moment, you can see the code files for Vibe.Power Apps. You can't edit them. Somebody might need to fact check that. Last I checked it a few months ago, you couldn't do it. The plan is to bring them to parity. So whether you start with writing code or you start with Vibe.Power Apps, the plan is for them to be basically the same thing. But it does give you that much more custom experience. Now, how that differs from Copilot Studio is Copilot Studio is really meant to be an agentic experience. So the idea that you are either conversing with an AI agent or an AI agent is autonomously acting on a trigger to go and do stuff. So it's a different experience than an application, where as a user, I go and I start interacting with things that either trigger automations or possibly agents to do things. Now, where this starts to get really interesting is there is an MCP server for Power Apps. And what that will do is that will surface a form, a Power Apps form in a conversational agent. So that's something it's on my list of things to play with. But what's really exciting about that is there are times where, let's say, I'm working in an agentic experience, but I don't necessarily want to have that turn by turn backwards and forward. Let's say I need to log a case. And the way you would log a case previously with Copilot Studio was you'd have this turn by turn conversation. What's your first name? What's your surname? What's your email? What's the issue? What's the right? And instead of having to wait for that, we can just surface up a case form, you know? So if you're conversing with the agent and it's like, "Hey, it sounds like you need to log a case," it'll just go, "Hey, here's the form, fill this in." And then the agent can then take those parameters and work with them. So, so at the moment, they are distinct experiences. Where I think things are going is you are we're getting to a place where whether you are in business applications, or so, you know, an internal user in an organization using business applications or an external user, you are going to have an agentic experience and you're not going to care. Am I in Copilot Studio? Am I in Power Apps? It doesn't matter, right? Because I'm just going to start from a screen and, you know, I might start conversing with the agent and then it's going to surface up a form and then it's going to go and do other things and it might, you know, give me a chart if I need or, you know, but yeah, this idea of, you know, this stuff kind of coming together and that's where I see it going, and that's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, Dataverse, it's a really interesting topic for me because I see I can choose so many databases when I use Azure,
Yep.
especially with Foundry. What is the big different or what makes Dataverse standing out from a normal database?
Yep. Yeah, so Dataverse, what makes it so exciting is it is this common data layer in an organization. So prior to Dataverse, when you needed to create different applications, let's say you had your CRM, and then let's say you had, you know, for your salespeople, and then let's say you had a marketing system, and then you had a system for customer service, and then maybe you had a system to manage assets and other things. They would all have distinct databases. And, you know, you generally have a common pool of customers and people that work at those customers. And then you need to integrate things because let's say you know, somebody puts an order into the sales system, well, that needs to go to other systems to, be actioned. And so you were writing integrations or you were putting in, complex middleware and things like that. Dataverse makes all of that irrelevant because it's basically the shared pool of data, which means once it's there, let's say, you know, we've set it up for our sales department and now we need to get started with customer service. Well, we don't have to go and reintegrate because our customer data is already there. And so, you know, if I need to surface up cases to the salespeople so they can see what service cases have been logged, I don't have to go writing an integration. I just have to add that to the form and make it available to the sales users. So it really is that magic behind the scenes. When Microsoft first introduced it, when it first started to kind of become a thing in the mid 2010s, so it was kind of 2016, 2017 when I started to hear about it. My first response was, I think Microsoft is about to replicate in biz apps what they did in desktop computing in the 1980s and 90s, you know, where they basically have created the thing that everybody is going to use because it's just so easy. So yeah, so Dataverse is incredibly special in terms of what it does. It is not just a database.
And there's something I think you are really familiar with it. It's Dataverse Business Skills. I think you
Yep.
described this as microservice for Copilot agents, when I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you explain this concept a little bit?
Yeah, so this is a preview feature from the Dataverse team, and it is you can think of it, so you might have started to hear a lot about skills, particularly at Build last week. This is starting to become a thing. I am saying that 2026 is the year of skills. Um, So if you have used tools like Claude Code, you might be familiar with adding skills to it. Um, but Dataverse Skills is basically a low code way for you to add logic to your agents. And so when you create an agent, it's gonna have instructions and it's gonna have tools like an MCP server or something like that that hooks it up to Dataverse and lets it do things. Um, let's say, our agent works in our customer service department, and we've got different procedures that it follows based on, what needs to happen. And let's say we add a new procedure or we modify a procedure. Um, if we do this at the agent level, this is gonna require us rewiring the agent, adding instructions to it, possibly modifying tools, testing it and then moving it between environments. And there's always some level of risk when you do these things. I mean, we do this every day as consultants, but there is always risk associated with modifications and deployments. There just is. Um, but with business skills, these are discoverable by that MCP connection. So as I add and modify instructions, firstly, this doesn't need to be done by a technical person. This can be done by the business user. So a manager in the customer service department can say, "This is our new procedure for gold level clients," or something like that, and they can write out instructions in business language, um, and then the MCP server these are discoverable by the MCP server. So, um, so as our procedures for the agent change, as we need to add new ones, we simply add them in Dataverse, and we can do this in the production system. Now, I know the ALM nerds are going to be freaking out at this point, but we're not fundamentally changing the agent. We're just giving it different capabilities that are discoverable by its MCP toolset, which means we don't have to go modify the agent and redeploy it or anything like that. And so I think of it like a microservice because it's the small little bit of functionality that we can add at the business level that extends the capability of that agent. So, hey, we've got a new procedure for gold tiered customers or something like that. And we can go and do that without all the rigmarole of ALM.
Yeah, the MCP topic, I found it really interesting. And I read, uh, I don't know where it's where, but someone says, yeah, MCP is the new name for API. So how will you explain MCP to someone who doesn't familiar with this
Sure.
concept?
Yeah. So earlier this year at Canadian Power Platform Summit, Rami Moonla, Clive Aldridge, and I gave a presentation on this. And the way I like to frame it is an API is like
Seksime,
Spotify and
Alois, Alois,
MCP is like a
Ikiges,
DJ. Now, you've probably never thought about why do we pay DJs when we just have Spotify to play music? It's an interesting question. I'd never thought of it before. But what the DJ is doing is they're actually curating the experience because they are participating in the event with you. They are there, they are taking in all the context. They can see how many people are there and are they on the dance floor and enjoying themselves. And so they can adjust the music that they're playing accordingly. Whereas a Spotify playlist just shuffles through the songs. So MCP is far more than an API. It uses APIs, but you're basically bringing the brains of an LLM into the process, and it can start to read the context. And so when it's triggered, it receives the prompt, and this is what I'm being asked to do. Okay, I'm being asked to do this. What do I know how to do? Okay, I know how to do these things. So I think I need let's say I've got 5 tools. I need tools 1, 3, and 5. And so I can go and do the thing. And then, it gets the next request. And it's like, oh, I need to run tool 5 and then tool 1 and then tool 4 based on what and so it can dynamically make these changes. Whereas APIs are far more brittle. They have a expected input, and to give you a defined output. So if that API is expecting a string, you had better give it a string. If you give it anything else, it's going to fail. Whereas MCP can determine what it's getting. Oh, you know, um, and it's cool to watch it learn on the fly and figure this out the way a human would. So you pass it some, you pass it something, it's like, "Ah, I've got I've got a string, but I actually need a number. Well, hang on, they sent me 15, but it's in string format. Let me convert that to a number, and now I can use it with my tool." And you watch it reason over and do these things. It's really, really cool to watch. So it is far more dynamic in terms of its capabilities. Yeah, so that's how I would explain the difference.
Yeah, I think it's a really good quote with the Spotify and the DJ. Um, but what role is then Dataverse in this picture?
Yep. So Dataverse is just your store of data. So your data is sitting in Dataverse, whether it's opportunities or leads or customers, or the business skills that we talked about previously. And when you connect it to an agent via Model Context Protocol, the exciting thing is that the MCP server can reason over your data and figure out how to solve things. So you don't have to explicitly put in all of that plumbing. So for example, if I was just using an API, so things like agent flows, connectors, the traditional stuff that we've worked with, um, if I connect it up to accounts and then I ask it about contacts, well, it's not going to be able to do that. It's going
Mm.
to fail. Whereas with MCP, it's going to say, "Oh, yeah, I can talk to account, I'm connected to accounts, I'm connected to contacts, I'm connected to all of that." Now in Copilot Studio, you are, what you can see and what you can do is governed by who you are as a user, and that's all baked in. So, which is which is, one of the kind of real selling points of the Microsoft solution because if let's say I am not entitled to look at customer records, it's not going to let me do that, or it's not going to let me look at records that I don't have permissions to see. Maybe I'm only allowed to see my records, and if I ask to see yours, it's not going to let me do that. But yeah, MCP just has, it has access to all of the tables in Dataverse, and so it can give you a far more dynamic experience.
Have you, yeah, say a real world architecture from your work you can walk us through without exposing the client?
Yeah. So at this point, it's still early days. So Dataverse MCP went GA, I want to say late last year. So I don't have anything in production that I've built for customers with Dataverse MCP. Some of the stuff that I have been building in terms of demos. So one of the things that I've explored recently using business skills in Dataverse MCP is this idea of a CPQ or configure price quote. So it's something Dynamics does not have natively, but it is fairly common in certain industries like telecommunications, specialty manufacturing, where we need to configure um, very complex quotes, quotes where there's a lot of governance. Or just to give a simple example, let's
Mm.
say we are building cabinets and we know that if we choose cabinet type X, it uses wood type Y. Wood type Y requires screw type Z and screw type, and we need paint type 1. Um, and so when I use a CPQ, that's all taken care of for me. I add the cabinet and all of that other stuff is added, as opposed to having to trust the salesperson to make the right choice about what they add to the quote. Because as we all know, salespeople tend to be allergic to process. Um, Now, CPQ systems are pretty expensive. They are not cheap to license. They have a lot of rules that allow you to do this level of automation. So what I started playing with was, well, what if I just created instructions in Dataverse Business Skills and used an agent with Dataverse MCP to start assembling these types of things? And it can do it. It can go and say, "Oh, for this, you want this type of product, it needs 3 of these and 4 of those and 5 of those and 6 of that," and just goes and adds all that to the opportunity for you, which is really, really cool. The Adds the opportunity product to the opportunity. So, yeah, we can start to do some really cool stuff with Dataverse MCP. um, with our agents in terms of some of the business processes that we either needed to have very expensive automation for, or things that were just kind of went in the too hard basket to automate. So, for example, um, there was a government customer that we worked with here a number of years ago, and this came out of a request that they had in case for so they used customer service to manage cases, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to be able to mask profanity in cases. Sometimes people are just having a bad day. They needed to complain to someone. They chose us. And so if we could just, mask profanity in the cases, because, yeah, who wants to read that?" Um, and it ended up becoming a demo that I created using Copilot Studio to say, well, let's say 80% of your cases you could answer from knowledge on your website, right? Your government, you've got pretty detailed knowledge. So let's just answer that, right? Then there's a subset, say 15% of your cases that need to actually become a case that goes to a human. Well, the agent can make that determination. And then there's that final 5% where somebody is just they're having a bad day and they needed to complain to somebody. Well, they just need to get an empathetic response. So why does a human need to read through that? And, you know, nobody wants to read through that all day, right? And so using using an agent in Copilot Studio and MCP, you can do that. You can literally have it read incoming, in this case, I used emails, but you could use a portal or really anything you wanted to, because it's just language. You get language and say, what does this person want to do? Hey, do I know how to solve this from my knowledge? No. Okay. Do I think they need to create a case? Yeah, I do. Or no, I can't solve this from my knowledge. It's really nothing I can do anything about. So I just need to craft an empathetic reply and send it to them. Um, Now, when we demoed this with the product group in Vegas at Power Platform Conference last year, somebody in the front row hand goes up and they're like, "Hey, shouldn't a human review this first before the email gets sent?" And I was like, "Yes, great point. I'm glad you asked. Don't try this at home." Absolutely human in the loop. But it gives you an idea of some of the stuff that we can start to automate. And again, we can have a human just reviewing, this is what was sent in and this is the response. Yep, that's good to go. So yeah, this is some of the stuff that's possible with model context protocol.
And will you say, I think Dataverse, MCP, and Business Skills are really, yeah, new products. Are they enterprise ready yet, or still beta?
Yep. So business skills are still in preview. So it is so I would say at the enterprise level, definitely try them out in a sandbox environment. I'd be careful about using it in production just because, as we always say, with things that aren't GA, you want to be careful about using it in production because the feature could drastically change or disappear altogether without prior notice. That's the deal with preview. Um, but they are definitely capable of handling enterprise grade tasks. So you think about assembling a bill of materials for a product, or um, working out the next best action for a salesperson. It's in a lot of ways it's kind of like a prompt. You're just giving instructions to your agent to say, okay, um, I'm working on this. Let's say I'm working with the salespeople, and um, they've got an opportunity that has gone to this. These things have happened on the opportunity, so I need to figure out the next best action and serve that up to the salesperson. And so these are all things that you can do in business skills, and provide those kinds of instructions to the agent. So yeah, I would say enterprises should definitely be evaluating it, because as they progress towards GA, I think these are going to make agents just increasingly more scalable in the organization. Because again, if I don't have to go through a whole SDLC cycle to make changes every time, because let's face it, business processes change very quickly, which is why we often end up with all of the Excel spreadsheets and other things, because we just IT doesn't have time to keep up. And so with things like business skills, we've got that microservice layer that can be edited at the business level to ensure that our agents can keep up with our business.
And in the case Microsoft doesn't rename it, where do you see the MCP in the next, 12 or 24 months?
Yep. So MCP is, I see it, it's really exciting. I was just chatting with a friend of mine the other day because I was very behind. I was one of the kind of the big, cheerleaders for Power FX functions, what was called low code plugins, which kind of got usurped by AI. So I was wrong about that, but I don't think I was wrong about MCP because you see it increasingly being used behind the scenes in things like Work IQ, in things like co-work and in skills. All of these tools are using model context protocol behind the scenes. So it is increasingly becoming a big deal and a big part of how these
Mhm.
AI tools work. So it is that kind of secret sauce that's letting us do all kinds of stuff um, with with our AI agents. And the best part about it is we don't have to do a lot of plumbing. We literally just give it natural language and say, go do this thing, and it can process that and go and start creating stuff in Dataverse and updating stuff in Dataverse for us. Whereas previously we'd have to go and configure something in Power Automate or a connector in our agent. So there'd be quite a bit of config, which we don't really have to do as much of now.
Mm. There are a lot of people, they write something like, I don't know, run my entry company with agents.
Yep.
Uh, okay, we have this human in the loop topic, but did you think organizations will eventually have dozens or even hundreds or thousands of specialized agents in this future?
Oh, I think it's inevitable. At some point, that's what we will see. Now, I am an optimist. The doom scenario is, the agents are going to do all the jobs. We're not going to need humans anymore. Um, we saw that from um, Microsoft's AI CEO. Sorry, his name is. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Mustafa Suleiman. Just a few weeks ago saying, in 18 months, we're not going to need humans anymore. Um, I I don't agree with that. So now, do I think that AI is able to do a lot of the tasks that people do today? Yes. Um, but I believe it is going to create far more opportunities for us as humans to more fully express our humanity because we're not going to have to do the boring stuff that um, automation has been able to do, that AI will increasingly be able to do. Read this and summarize it. Read this and figure out what team it routes to, that type of stuff. And that's going to free us up to spend time um, really developing relationships, understanding. The example that I love to give is 5 years ago when I bought my house. As a first time home buyer, I had absolutely no idea what was going on, right? It's terrifying because you are spending the most amount of money you have ever spent in your life. Everybody involved in the process is rushing you along. Um, your attorney is speaking a language that sounds like English, but clearly isn't because you have no idea what they said, right? They're getting paid a lot of money to do something that an AI agent could do. Now imagine if the AI agent is handling the paperwork, right? So now that lawyer, that mortgage broker, that real estate agent is now freed up to spend time engaging with me, understanding what I want, understanding my fears, guiding me through the process. I guarantee that people would be willing to pay a lot more money for that than they are for. I mean, I literally the other week got a bill from my lawyer for looking at a contract for a house that we were looking to buy for $360 for an hour of their time. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, and yeah, I felt like an idiot because I should have put it into Copilot instead of having the lawyer look at it. But it's like, yeah, like, you are clipping a ticket for a very low value task. And so I have no problem with that stuff going away, right? Because it's not creating a lot of value. And yeah, there's going to be, for people that can adapt, like, yeah, that's not great, but look, you're not generating a lot of value. But if you are able to pivot and say, all right, I'm not going to focus so much on the nuts and bolts of shuffling paperwork around, but I am going to focus on understanding you, Nathan, as a customer, as a person, um, then you'll probably be able to charge a lot more money for that. So yeah, I'm incredibly optimistic about where it's going.
Mm, awesome, yeah. Yeah, congrats to the house. Um, and also, what did you think those, yeah, I'd say leadership or company culture or change management play in this modern AI
Yep.
world?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, change management is the eternal question, right? We never seem to get it right. I think we try, but it just, I guess, rule number one of life is it always could have been handled better. Um, I think for I think in a lot of organizations, the challenge is really going to be how do we bring everybody along on this journey? Because you're going to have people that are going to be very resistant and fearful, right? Take my solicitor, right? No, I don't want an AI agent doing that. I've been doing this since longer than you've been alive, Nathan, and the agent can't do this, this, and this. And it's like, sure, okay, but it still offers a lot more value. And so it's going to be, how do we bring people on this journey? How do we upskill them? How do we help them see, you know, the potential, and where and how, their jobs can open up and how they can do stuff that is far more fulfilling and creates a lot more value. There's also the issue of how do we tackle shadow AI in the organization, because we've got official tools like M365 Copilot that that's what we want you to use, but it is it's like whack-a-mole trying to say, okay, well, how do we prevent somebody from going to Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity or one of these other tools in a browser, or, even on a mobile device? I mean, it is increasingly difficult to try and lock this stuff down. And so it's really, there needs to be this education piece around, here's how you do this stuff responsibly, and this is what it's going to enable you to do and how it's going to open your horizons as a result of doing it. So it's incredibly important that we get it right. Exactly how we do that, is, yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question.
Yeah, I have also a client. The first time I have talked to them, they will start with only yeah, they think about starting with Power Platform, and they have also the shadow IT topic, and
Yep.
they say, "Okay, we don't activate it." And then I say, "Okay, the people use other tools, so it's better
Yep.
have the shadow IT you can control in your in your tenant, or you have it external, and it's the same company as also the questions about Copilot." And I say the
Yep.
same thing. Um, yeah, I think that's a topic, but there are, I think, in Microsoft there are really great tools like PureView, and when you use it right, I think you can find a lot of shadow IT stuff.
Yep.
So this it's something you have to think about, but I
Yep.
think the risk is more higher if the people doing it
Yep.
anywhere.
Yep.
So that's I think that's a topic yeah, companies must think about.
Yeah.
Uh, so what when you have one thing on Dataverse or on Copilot Studio, you can say to Microsoft they should develop a feature. What should it be?
I'm sorry?
When you got Microsoft says, Nathan, you get you get all the money, the time, and the resources you need. What feature will you develop for Dataverse or for Copilot Studio?
Hmm. That's a very good question. Yeah. I don't have a I don't have an amazing answer, but I would probably, the biggest one would be, I would love when I copy environments, I would love to be able to specify which tables in Dataverse are reference data versus which ones are transactional or operational data, because there are times when you're copying an environment and I don't want to bring all the data across, but there's some data that I need to bring across in order to use it. Master data, reference data, stuff like that. And to be able to classify that when you're copying environments, that would be amazing. That so it's not a super sexy feature, but that would make life so much easier.
Yeah, it must not be all super sexy, I think. Um, so let's jump in the quick fire round. Uh, yeah, coffee, tea, or energy drink during development.
Coffee.
Power apps or Power Automate.
Oh, it's a tough one. Can I say agent?
Okay, you have Dataverse or SQL.
Dataverse.
Makers or developers.
What's the difference?
That's also a good answer. Prompt engineer or traditional coding.
Prompt engineer.
Teams or Outlook.
Neither.
MVP Summit or Ignite.
MVP Summit all the way.
Biggest productivity hack.
Biggest productivity hack, when I said neither for Teams and Outlook, if we could uninvent distractions all day, that would be amazing. So yeah, shutting down Teams, shutting down Outlook, lets me focus.
And one product that deserves more attention.
Whoo, that's a tough one. Um, yeah, I'm completely drawing a blank. Yeah,
Yeah.
I yeah, I would say, Dataverse and Dataverse MCP, because that is powering so much of what we do today is powered by that, so, yeah.
I think a lot of people are a little bit overwhelming with all these new Microsoft releases. How do you learn about it and what tips can
Yeah.
you give?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually talking with my team about this last week, and one of the things that I'm keen to come up with personally is just a framework for what do you focus on, because it does change quite rapidly, and, we've all got limited time for learning and development. You wanna make sure you focus on the right thing. I would say, based on everything that I'm seeing, you can't go wrong with M365 Copilot at this point. That is increasingly becoming, our kind of anchor during the day. It used to be Outlook, then it was Teams. It is increasingly becoming M365 Copilot, and will probably even more so be Cowork very soon. That's still a new feature, but yeah, I would say you can't go wrong with M365 Copilot, um, and I would say, yeah, otherwise, do you learn MCP? Do you learn skills? It's not always a bad idea to kind of give it a bit of time to see what kind of shakes out. Generally, in the MVP community, we tend to be very far out on the bleeding edge, but this stuff does change a lot. So for the average, kind of um, listener at home, I've got limited time. Just give it a few months. See, you don't necessarily have to be the first on every new thing that's announced. In the AI sphere. You can kinda wait to see, what starts to get a bit of traction. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And is there anything you actually learning?
So I am really focused on kinda what came out of Build last week, so starting to get hands-on with skills and putting plugins into Cowork, and, yeah, I'm pretty excited of this idea of, you know this idea of what I call headless CRM or headless ERP, where I can start to use Dataverse skills and plugins to in tools like Cowork, and suddenly the idea of the CRM as an application starts to go away because I can just start chatting with it and it knows to update opportunities or work with cases or whatnot based on who I am or what context I give it. And so I think our our days of building these very comprehensive model driven apps may be coming to a close, which is interesting and exciting to see how we can do this agentically.
Yeah, thank you. So then my last question is for the listeners, what should they take from the conversion to conversion, yeah, from the talk today, about Copilot Studio, Dataverse, MCP, and Agent. What should it be when they take one thing from
Yeah.
this session?
I would say if you take one thing away is to be open-minded about change and getting hands-on with it. Um, don't don't be resistant. I was a bit resistant at first, but this is the way our industry is going. There will, you know, I think it will be it's like that quote from The Sun Also Rises by Hemingway. How did you go broke gradually then suddenly? Our world is going to follow a similar trajectory. How did you become an unemployed low coder gradually then suddenly, right? There will be less and less of the traditional stuff that we have done, but there is going to be an exponential growth in agents and skills and understanding tools like MCP and understanding Scout that was just announced last week and Windows Claw and all these different things and being able to work with them, understand when to use them. So yeah, I would say have an open mind, understand it, and yeah, you will find that you are in demand for years to come.
Yeah, then, yeah, huge thank you, Nathan Roos, for joining us today and sharing all your insights about the Power Platform, Copilot Studio, Dataverse, NCP business skills, and the future of agentic AI with Microsoft 65. Yeah, and yeah, this was awesome. So thank you very much. And yeah, one thing I can say, I hope the people see these AI stuff not as Jason more than I don't know any nice guy on the movies we have. And yeah, thank you so much for the session.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mirko.